You bursting blister, yelled the constable. You mouse-eaten maggot. This is not adding up. This is multiplication. The answer is 3/8, or is it 8/3? What is the difference between 3/8 and 8/3? Tell me that. You mangled little Wurzel in. Look sharp about it. By now, Wilfred was far too frightened and bewildered even to speak. In 2 strides, the Trunchbull was beside him, and by some amazing gymnastic trick, it may have been judo or karate, she flipped the back of Wilfred's legs with one of her feet, so that the boy shot up off the ground and turned a somersault in the air. But halfway through the somersault, she caught him by an ankle and held him dangling upside down like a plucked chicken in a shop window. 8/3, the Trunchbull shouted, swinging Wilfred from side to side by his ankle. 8/3 is the same as 3/8, and 3/8 are 24. Repeat that. At exactly that moment, Nigel, at the other end of the room, jumped to his feet and started pointing excitedly at the blackboard and screaming, "The chalk! The chalk! Look at the chalk! It's moving all on its own!" So hysterical and shrill was Nigel's scream that everyone in the place, including the Trunchbull, looked up at the blackboard, and there, sure enough, a brand new piece of chalk was hovering near the gray-black writing surface of the blackboard. "It's writing something," screamed Nigel. "The chalk is writing something," and indeed it was. "What the blazes is that?" yelled the Trunchbull. It had shaken her to see her own first name being written like that by an invisible hand. She dropped Wilfred onto the floor. Then she yelled at nobody in particular. "Who's doing this? Who's writing it?" The chalk continued to write. "Agatha, this is Magnus. This is Magnus." Everyone in the place heard the gasps that came from the Trunchbull's throat. "No," she cried. "It can't be. It can't be Magnus." "It is Magnus, and you'd better believe it." Miss Honey, at the side of the room, glanced swiftly at Matilda. The child was sitting very straight at her desk, the head held high, the mouth compressed, the eyes glittering like 2 stars. "Agatha, give my Jenny back her house." For some reason, everyone now looked at the Trunchbull. The woman's face had turned white as snow, and her mouth was opening and shutting like a halibut out of water and giving out a series of strangled gasps. "Give my Jenny her wages. Give my Jenny the house. Then get out of here. If you don't, I'll come and get you. I'll come and get you like you got me. I'm watching you, Agatha." The chalk stopped writing. It hovered for a few moments, then suddenly it dropped to the floor with a tinkle and broke in two. Wilfred, who had managed to resume his seat in the front row, screamed, Miss Trunchbull has fallen down. Miss Trunchbull is on the floor. This was the most sensational bit of news of all, and the entire class jumped up out of their seat to have a really good look. And there she was, the huge figure of the headmistress, stretched full length on her back across the floor, up for the count. Miss Annie ran forward and knelt beside the prostrate giant. "She's faint," she cried. "She's out cold. Someone go and fetch the matron at once." 3 children ran out of the room. Nigel, always ready for action, licked up and seized the big jug of water. "My father says cold water is the best way to wake up someone who's faint," he said, and with that he tipped the entire contents of the jug over the Trunchbull's head. No one, not even Miss Honey, protested. As for Matilda, she continued to sit motionless at her desk. She was feeling curiously elated. She felt as though she had touched something that was not quite of this world, and highest point of the heavens, the furthest star. She had felt most wonderfully the power surging up behind her eyes, gushing like warm fluid inside her skull, and her eyes had become scorching hot, hotter than ever before, and things had come bursting out of her eye sockets. And then the piece of chalk had lifted itself up and had begun to write. It seemed as though she had hardly done anything. It had all been so simple. The school matron, followed by 5 teachers, 3 women and 2 men, came rushing into the room. "By golly, somebody's floored her at last," cried one of the men, grinning. "Congratulations, Miss Honey." "Who threw the water over her?" asked the matron. "I did," said Nigel proudly. "Good for you," another teacher said. "Shall we get some more?" "Stop that," the matron said. "We must carry her up to the sick room." It took all 5 teachers and the matron to lift the enormous woman and stagger with her out of the room. Miss Annie said to the class, "I think you'd all better go to the playground and amuse yourselves until the next lesson." Then she turned and walked over to the blackboard and carefully wiped out all the chalk writing. The children began filing out of the classroom. Matilda started to go with them, but as she passed Miss Annie, she paused and her twinkling eyes met the teacher's eyes, and Miss Annie ran forward and gave the tiny child a great big hug and a kiss. A new home. Later that day, the news began to spread that the headmistress had recovered from her fainting fit and had then marched out of the school building, tight-lipped and white in the face. The next morning she did not turn up at school. At lunchtime, Mr. Trilby, the deputy head, telephoned their house to inquire if she was feeling unwell. There was no answer to the phone. When school was over, Mr. Trilby decided to investigate further. So he walked to the house, where Miss Trunchbull lived on the edge of the village. The lovely small red brick Georgian building known as the Red House tucked away in the woods behind the hills. He rang the bell, no answer. He knocked loudly, no answer. He called out, is anybody at home? No answer. He tried the door and to his surprise found it unlocked. He went in. The house was silent and there was no one in it, and yet all the furniture was still in place. Mr. Turby went upstairs to the main bedroom. Here also everything seemed to be normal until he started opening drawer and looking into cupboard. There were no clothes or underclothes or shoes anywhere. They had all gone. She's done a bunk, Miss Trilby said to himself, and he went away to inform the school governors that the headmistress had apparently vanished. On second morning, Miss Honey received by registered post a letter from the firm of local solicitors informing her that the last will and testament of her late father, Dr. Honey, had suddenly and mysteriously turned up. This document revealed that, ever since her father's death, Miss Honey had in fact been the rightful owner of a property on the edge of the building known as the Red House, which until recently had been occupied by a Miss Agatha Trunchbull. The will also showed that her father's lifetime savings, which fortunately were still safely in the bank, had also been left to her. The solicitor's letter added that if Miss Honey would kindly call into the office as soon as possible, then the property and the money could be transferred into her name very rapidly. Miss Honey did just that, and within a couple of weeks she had moved into the Red House, the very place in which she had been brought up and where luckily all the family furniture and pictures were still around. From then on, Matilda was a welcome visitor to the Red House every single evening after school, and a very close friendship began to develop between the teacher and the small child. Back at school, great changes were also taking place. As soon as it became clear that Miss Trunchbull had completely disappeared from the scene, the excellent Mr. Trilby was appointed as head teacher in her place. And very soon after that, Matilda was moved up into the top form where Miss Flimstone quickly discovered that this amazing child was every bit as bright as Miss Honey had said. One evening, a few weeks later, Matilda was having tea with Miss Honey in the kitchen of the Red House after school, as they always did, when Matilda said suddenly, "Something strange had happened to me, Miss Honey." "Tell me about it," Miss Honey said. "This morning," Matilda said, "just for fun, I tried to push something over with my eyes and I couldn't do it. Nothing moved. I didn't even feel the hotness building up behind my eyeballs. The power had gone. I think I've lost it completely." Miss Honey carefully buttered a slice of brown bread and put a little strawberry jam on it. "I've been expecting something like that to happen," she said. "You have? Why?" Matilda said. "Well," Miss Honey said, It's only a guess, but here's what I think. While you were in my class, you had nothing to do, nothing to make you struggle. Your fairly enormous brain was going crazy with frustration. It was bubbling and boiling away like mad inside your head. There was tremendous energy bottled up in there with nowhere to go. And somehow or other you were able to shoot that energy out through your eyes and make objects move. But now things are different. You are in the top form competing against children more than twice your age, and all that mental energy is being used up in class.